There is a moment in every life when you decide to rise, to stand taller than your fear, to speak louder than your doubt, to chase the vision that sets your soul on fire. This is that moment. And here, we walk it together with stories that awaken, voices that inspire, and truths that set you free. This is Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald, where hope has a voice, and that voice is yours. And welcome, everybody, to another great day of Positive Talk Radio. And I got to tell you, Rochelle, how are you today? You are just looking fabulous as always.
I am doing amazing. I still have so much energy from yesterday that I'm carrying on with me. Lots of gratitude. And that follows in exactly with who we've got today. Would you like to introduce him, or shall I?
I think you should, because I'll probably massacre his last name as usual.
No worries. Well, we have Ed Hajim back with us today. His website is his name, edhajim.com, and that's EDHAJIM.com.
Hajim sounds much better, but unfortunately, it's Hajim, like shouting for Jim.
Oh, yes, with H. Don't forget the H, people. We'll go over that a few more times.
That's okay, no problem.
Well, thanks for being here again, Ed. How are you?
Good. Beautiful day down here in Florida, 70 degrees, and it's even better because all my friends up north are freezing in snow and rain and so forth. So the contrast is pretty special.
And you don't have to scrape your driveway or anything.
Oh, well, I did it for 35 years, so I mean, I put my time in.
Yes, you did. Yes, you did. Well, we're going to talk to you about your books, and you've also got a really unique program that you are operating that I want to spend a lot of time working on, because it's working with the youth of America to teach them how to live their life, not just to learn stuff.
That's right. I said to you, Kevin, before we talked, that I believe that there's two kinds of education. One teaches you how to make a living, and the other one teaches you how to make a life. And a lot of our educational institutions do a pretty good job of teaching you how to make a living, but they don't formally teach you how to make a life. That's usually done in the dormitories and the dining rooms in your spare time. It's done not in a formal fashion. And my crusade, which is presumptuous, is to add a dimension to college or university or even senior high school education, where young people sit down and think about questions like, who am I? Where do I want to go? How do I expect to get there? What's the road to get there? And then when I get there, maybe, am I going to be happy? That's a bigger one. But those three or four questions, and the first one is a very important question for a 17 to 25-year-old, because you recognize that you really have no control over your life until you're that age. And you're really a combination of your genes. You have no control over that. And your environment, whether you're in Greenwich, Connecticut, or or Portland, Oregon, or Kiev, you're basically you're a captive of your environment and your genes. Somewhere in that 17, 18, 19, 20-year-old, you wake up someplace, either a first job or university, or separated from your parents and your environment, and you ask the question, who am I? And what part of me do I want to keep? What part of me, maybe I want to eliminate or at least decrease, and what parts of me do I want to add in the near future? And that's what the whole process of my mind education is, testing words. And I can go on and on. I better stop quickly. My daughter worked for TED Talks. She said, "Daddy, one major mistake. Question too long, so I'm going to stop." But I can answer. I can go along that line if you'd like.
Well, Ed, as Rochelle can tell you, because she just turned 27, which means that her brain now is fully formed, because they say that your brain continues to evolve until you're in your mid-20s. And it's an important aspect. And she works with a lot of teenagers, and they're all concerned about what are they going to do? How are they going to live? How are they going to live? And, there's a 5-letter word that didn't used to be in the vocabulary of anybody, and that was happy. How do you live to be happy. Rochelle, do you find that a lot of kids your age or younger in their teenage years are struggling with the concept?
Yeah, you know what's crazy? And I'm so glad you asked that question. I wanted to mention this because it seems like there's no passion. There's like there's some hobbies and there's some things, but really, Ed, I'll tell you, I asked them, what do you want to do when you have a vision? You know, I'll check back in with them a few days, a few weeks, a few months, and they just tell me, I don't know. And I don't know how to help them.
But you see, what we've started with, there are 10 schools using the process now. You ask them the question and you're serious, but they walk away.
Yeah.
Take a class. And we're gonna have a class, we're gonna talk about passions right now. And I have no passion, I don't know what I'm gonna do. Oh, come on now. What do you like to do? What gets you a little bit excited? And then the kids work together in groups of 4, they push each other. Oh, I like horses, I like working outside. Chemistry is okay. All of a sudden, veterinarian working, it comes into position somehow, and they work on it. In fact, one of the schools now is innovated to the point that they force the children, the students, into 3 life paths, 3 roads. Pick a road, go down the path where you get to. Pick another road. Here's what my father wants me to do. Here's what I think I want to do, and here's if I have nothing else to do, I do this. And it's interesting, forcing formally. Because you start writing stuff down, I took a creative writing course, and just after the first day, and the lady said to me, I said, what should I do? Teach me how to creative write. She says, start writing. And I said, what do you mean? For the next hour, you're going to write. And that's very important because you start to write, you start to feel exact certain things. But you're right, today's young people today, that's why I think I'm topical, because given AI, which is really shaking things up for young people, social media, which just continues to shake up people, and then you're throwing in this geopolitics today, which is for the first time in most people's lives, America is not totally number one. I think we're still number one, but we have there's a book called, it's esoteric. It's a book written by Graham Allison called Thucydides' Trap, and in the 2,500 years, there have been 16 instances where there was a ruling nation like the United States and a rising nation like China. And there's always a problem during that period. And that we're coming to that. China is definitely competing with. So you can add those 4 things together: AI, social media, geopolitical changing, and the rising nation in the world. Kids, it's not so simple.
Yeah.
When my grandfather went to work, he went to college, learned a trade, stayed there his whole life, died. It was easy. Today, these students, I shouldn't say children, are going to live 100 years, almost guaranteed, most average. They've got to pivot a number of times. So not only do they have to learn something to do, but they got to learn how to handle a turn in the road. That's why I think writing out a life plan, a road for life, finding out who you are earlier. You may say, this is a good talent for this particular 5 to 7, 10 years. And all of a sudden that talent's not good anymore because the game changes. You got to figure, here's another talent that I have, or another interest that I have that I should pursue that. So that's sort of the thought process I have. We're early stage now. I've got 10 schools, as I say, working on it. One, Hobart William Smith is using it as a required freshman course. There are 2 high schools, one, very upscale high school in Connecticut, and one school in Newark at the other end, and for mostly first gens. They're both doing it. So we're starting to find it interesting. And actually, I've gotten a possibility of doing a video game of my book, the second book.
Oh, that's cool. That's really cool. Well, you just mentioned...
Be the first video game when nobody gets shot.
Yeah, that's probably true. Ed, you mentioned too in the explanation that you gave of community and them having connections with each other. And I think that's a big deal too, because they'll give each other maybe, new hobbies, new habits, new whatever it is, new sparks of ideas. Does it mean they're healthy connections? Not at all. So you're forcing something for the kids to think about them, but also to work together with other kids, having healthy, productive conversation. And I think that's where that next step really lacks.
But these groups are 10, there's 4 to 10, but you get 10 people sitting around in a circle saying, here's my life. All of a sudden, here's what I'm interested in. Yeah. I think I'm interested in that too. And all of a sudden, first of all, you build a relationship. You feel like you're not alone, and that's important. So the first thing in my course is they sit down and tell their story.
Oh, cool.
And that really brings people together, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because we do the weirdest thing. We tell a kid who's 15, 16, 17, okay, what do you want to study in college? What do you want to be when you grow up? And they're making life decisions when they're 18, 19 years old, and they're no more equipped to make those life decisions unless they get help with older people who've been there.
Been there, done that.
To help them understand that what you decide to do in college is probably not. Well, I'll give you an example. My older sister got a degree in education, and she has never been a teacher in her entire life because she ended up having to get a job, and there were no teaching jobs available, and so she ended up. So the whole educational process she did not utilize to the best of her ability. And we do that, and we expect these kids to come out having an idea, having a clue when they're 22. I don't know if you remember when you were 22, Ed, but I remember when I was.
I say I was very lucky. I had, for some reason, I had early on, deciding what. First of all, I became a chemical engineer because that I knew I could get a job. As soon as I got to college, I got fascinated with physics, so I tested it out my sophomore year. I took advanced physics, where all the engineers were taking engineering physics, which was pretty routine, but advanced physics, you had all the physicists in there. And I was in there, maybe a month, and I realized these are not my people. This is not they're just different than I am. They're also, most of them seem to be smarter, also more committed. And the subject itself, the word physics sounded good, but actually when I got into it, really didn't fascinate me. But I tried it out, and therefore I could put it aside. Like your friend, if she would have been able to I want to be a teacher, and she sort of taught early on, she'd say, well, yes, this is exciting or not. Or you say there's no job available. My junior year, I got fascinated with big projects, electrical plants, dams. So they were building the St. Lawrence Seaway in northern New York State, and I checked up there, and I got a job working, right down the pit, blasting and pouring cement and so on and so forth. And I loved the work. Being outside and seeing these monstrous cement structures and so forth. Then I realized, I looked around and I said, the guys running this place live in trailers for 10 years. These projects don't, finish overnight. And, St. Lawrence Seaway, the guy, one of the old salt stone, he said, and this is probably the best location in the world. He said, my last two jobs, one was in the mountains of Pakistan, and the other third one was in the jungles of Venezuela. So I realized that the job sounded pretty good, but the way you live isn't. And I wanted, again, when you write things down, I wanted a family. I didn't have a family. I wanted a wife and children. And that was not a life for someone with a wife and children. So these are the kind of balances or harmonies, I call them, that you have to put together. And you start to recognize that's why it's passions. And it's not just passion, it's an overused word. It's talents, interests, that's your context. Yeah. You have totally different interests and passions. And if you're in Kiev today, if you're in New York City, tell me, trust me. But you got to take the context also. But then your principles, some people, my daughter, for example, after working on Wall Street for a long period of time, said, I don't want to make money for rich people. It doesn't interest me anymore. So she went to TED Talks where she was bringing ideas to fore. That was her enthusiasm. And she, by the way, we went back and looked at her interest, and her interest was in communications and writing and talking. And, that was early on. And she actually worked for Fortune before coming to Wall Street. So she went back to it. But this is the kind of thing I want you to write down. I want you to graduate with a roadmap for life, and where you've got a whole bunch of these tests that you either passed or failed along the way. I think that's kind of interesting, But I must admit that this era is, maybe everybody said that, every era gets a little more complicated. But, I'm spending time with a 27-year-old now talking about dating in the modern era. And, I'm not qualified to do that, but we have a conversation and we get 10,000 hits a week because it's a real question now. Yep. I mean, people are having trouble connecting, and we're talking. She's obviously dating and in the routine, and she's asking me questions about, who pays for a date and things like that. And people want to know, they want to talk about it. It's funny.
Well, I have the same conversation because I know a 27-year-old too.
It's a different world.
It's huge. It's hugely different. By the way, Brachelle, we're talking with Ed.
Ed Hajim. Go to his website, which is his name. The last name is Hajim. EdHajim.com is where to go. He's got his books, On the Road Less Traveled and Islands of the Four Ps, which we're going to talk about when we come back.
Thank you.
And I have to tell you that I did. Speaking of AI, I went to AI and I said, we like to do these what we call points to ponder, and which are, rather than a commercial, they're just interesting snippets and things. And AI said, "Oh yeah, that's a thing. That's a big thing." So I'm going to play one about something that we all need. It's the I word. Here's another point to ponder from Positive Talk Radio. What is the easiest thing to justify? It is a small transgression. The one no one will ever see, no one will ever know. The tiny exaggeration on the expense report. The extra minute you took on your lunch break. The packaging you tossed in the wrong recycle bin because it was closer. In those moments, the question isn't, will I get caught? The question is, will I know? It isn't about avoiding punishment. It's a silent agreement you make with yourself when you choose to do the right thing. To return the wallet. To fix the mistake. To respect the empty space. You aren't impressing the world. You're earning your own respect. That small choice, made entirely in private, is how you build a life you never have to look away from. The only audience that matters is you. And welcome back to Positive Talk. My name is Kevin McDonald. Rochelle is right there. And Rochelle, we've got a great guest. He's got a couple of books out. He's also got a program that he's teaching kids how to live, not just how to make a living. And so tell us how to reach Ed.
Yes, well, the best way that I believe is at his website, edhajim.com. He has his books there, the course there about him, and some other stuff like some events that he's been to and got going on. Ed, and as we've been taking this, we've played the integrity and we've talked about all these different routes and ways, and I've realized that we are set up, well, the younger generation especially, and people around my age are being really pushed to have a path, right? So you do this and then you do that and you get there and you do that. And then there's all these ideas and it's much more open. The world is more broad. You could do anything, right?
Yeah.
But they want us to make such a strict path out of that. And the way that you just described trying new things, just checking it out. Like, do I really like this? Let me learn a little bit about it. Let me dip my foot in the water and just check it out. Why aren't we
Don't be afraid to fail.
kids the space for that?
Early failure is a gift.
Yeah.
It tells you what you don't want to do. But that snippet was very important because in my book, it's find your passions, then find your principles. And finding your principles early on, finding the rules you want to follow, finding the lines you won't cross early. Because what this little snippet showed is later on you get to these lines, they're a little bit fuzzy. And you got to go back and you got to reach back in your bag of tricks and say, this is something I decided. And then early on you decide that. Of course, in the old days, and I don't want to criticize anybody, but in the old days, religion played a much bigger part in the whole process. And I was in a Catholic grammar school and you learned, what was right and wrong. And you learned it with the golden ruler. If you learned the golden rule, golden ruler. The nuns really took care of things, and they made it very clear. And for a 7, 8, 9-year-old mind, if you did the right things, you were going to end up in this good place. If you did the wrong things, you're going to end up in the other place. And later on, you recognize maybe that's not true, but that was inbred into you, and and made it relatively easy to find the rules you want to follow. That snippet was perfect. It's not who's watching, it's you. And every time I worked on Wall Street, kind of every day I had a chance to cross the line, because there were things that happened that you could find things out you shouldn't have found out, and you had that rule set in your mind because the line was pretty fuzzy and the returns were big if you wanted to play the game, and but I didn't. Luckily, I spent 60 years and came out alive.
Well, and the interesting thing about that in that piece is that you get to choose. And if you choose to live your life in a way that you can look at yourself in the mirror and be proud of the person that is looking back at you, that's really is all there really is, isn't there?
Yeah, and you're telling young people that someday they are going to have to look in the mirror. And those things that they might collect along the way that people don't know about that they did wrong, it'll bother you. Let them know that it'll bother you. I mean, almost everything as I remember that I ever did wrong, they're still there. Things when I was not nice to somebody or did something wrong. I shoplifted as a child. I can still remember it. I was a bookie when I was a freshman in high school. When a bunch of guys got together. It was a wrong thing to do. He got caught. I didn't. But I remember it very vividly. You will make mistakes and you will do things that are wrong, and you can't have too many of them. It really starts to bother you.
Yes.
Yes, indeed. Or you end up in a place with bars and people that you don't want to know, and that's not a good place to be too. And I want to talk about you, the man, because you've been on the planet for a while now, and you have done so many things and written a couple of books. Are you proud of your legacy that you are leaving behind?
Oh yeah, I mean that's the most important thing. You don't go out to make legacies, but if you're lucky enough to make a few, I always say, somewhere along my 50s or 60s, I came across a quote saying, you're not going to live forever, but try to make things that will. And I have a couple things now in my lifetime that will. I mean, the University of Rochester has my name on the School of Engineering, Hajim, the Hajim School of Engineering and Applied Sciences. They actually have there's a statue up there of me on the campus. And I have a scholarship program for a bunch of kids in my school. And that's a legacy that will live forever. I mean, it won't stop because scholarships basically change people's lives. They changed my life. I built a golf course in Nantucket. It was a lucky break. I got rejected by the local golf course, so I built my own golf course. And now...
And that golf course is now more popular than the golf course that rejected you, isn't it?
Well, the golf was an old famous one, but anyway. And our golf course is now the largest charity on the island. So we took a golf course, we made an institution out of it. We give 25 scholarships a year to this local high school. So these are legacies. The biggest legacy of all, of course, is what you really want to do. And this is what young people are having a problem with, is having a family and doing the best job you can with it. Now, I get that everybody off the hook. Raising children is impossible, but you do the best job you can. And that's my biggest legacy. I have 3 children and 8 grandchildren. And, I told you, Kevin, I got a new title. I'm marrying my oldest grandchild in state of Washington, in Ferndale, in July. I couldn't believe it. You send $50 into the state, and they send you back a big plaque with Pastor Ed Hajim on it, and they give, my wife said you can't wear the vestments. She said this is serious. You can't do that. I was getting all dressed up. She said no, but it's a great that's a legacy. I'll give you a chance to marry your oldest grandchild. And by the way, he wasn't the one that has ideas. It was fiance, so it was very nice. But you really, I feel very strongly that family is definitely the biggest legacy of all. The university was something that was very lucky. I had a legacy in business too, but I sold the company once and I bought it back and I sold it again. And the legacy was that anybody that stayed with me for the 20 years did pretty well. And I feel pretty good about that people said, came along with me. We did very well. So those are legacies. And the golf course is obviously a legacy. It's something that will last at least 100 years. And I have 500 families over 25 years whose lives have been changed because of the club. And so that's they play golf there, but they beat other people there, and it's a social experience. And then we take this, we basically support 90 charities on the island and give 25 scholarships. And it's really it's a model that if I ever have time, I'll take it to other cities. So this is these are the kinds of things that you do, but you do them and you don't know it's going to be a legacy when you do them, but they seem to be.
And I've got to ask you, because that statue, as you were standing there looking at the statue and somebody else walked up and they were looking at the statue and then they looked at you, then they looked at the statue and then they looked at you again, did they have an epiphany like, dang, that's you?
That's me. That's right. I'm the first one in my neighborhood to have a statue, by the way.
You're the first person I've ever met, other than Sylvester Stallone with Rocky, that has his own statue.
You're dead when they made, you're dead. You don't get to see your statue, but they haven't done too many bad things to it yet. But it's 8 foot of bronze. I mean, it's sitting there.
Rochelle, have you met anybody with their own statue until now?
No. And you're gonna be next, and then I'll follow you. Ed, what is the golf course called?
It's called the Nantucket Golf Club. It's in Nantucket, Massachusetts, and it was about 25 years ago. We built a house there, and I was, all my friends belonged to this old fancy club, and they said no problem. And then all of a sudden, the president called me and said, "You're probably never going to get in. It's going to take too long. You'll probably never get in." So I said, "Barbara, sell a house." And she said, "You built a golf course in Vail." I built with a bunch of guys. I didn't build it. A bunch of guys got together, built a golf course in Vail. She said, "Why don't you build one here?" And I said, "It's an island. You can't do it." So I went out and I found 300 acres, and I called the guy from Vail who really did the job. I just found the land and helped him raise money, but he's really a golf course architect. And he came out and did the whole thing, and he did a great job. And we built one in Vail, we built one in Nantucket, which I'm very involved with, and we built one in London, which was really beautiful. And there are 3 courses, kind of sister courses that go together, and that's fun. It was a great experience because building golf course, I didn't realize till after I got done watching it, it's really art with a bulldozer. You take this beautiful piece of 300 acres, you can make a mess out of it, and you can make it beautiful. And we made it beautiful. I mean, really, it's a sanctuary. You go out there and you just feel very, very comfortable. Anyway, that's just part of my life.
I will visit there someday. I promise.
Do it,
I'll drag Kevin.
A long way.
Well, Rochelle, I one day hope to be able to honestly say, well, I did this and I did this and I did that, and it was fun and it was a big deal. And it's like 3 golf courses in 3 different parts of the world, and his response is, it was fun. It's like,
You ever do it? One of my things in my book is you're only good as the people you surround yourself with. And I didn't do any of these by myself. In fact, I played a part in each one. In the University of Rochester, the president was a whirling dervish. It was spectacular. During my period of time, we raised over $1 billion. He did most of the work. I was the chairman, but he was the CEO. The golf courses, this fellow Fred Green basically did most of the work. I was my idea. I'll take that credit. And the one in Vail was his idea, so I joined him there. And you have the people you surround yourself with. I was a very successful businessman, but if I didn't have a 6'5" Dartmouth graduate named Steve, who spent 35 years with me, keeping me in line, I would never have made it. Steve would always say, "No, that's not a good idea." And then I know because he did the numbers. I was good in culture. I was good in strategy. I was reasonably good with people. I was not great with numbers. I didn't pay attention to balance sheets and income statements. He did that. He did it. And he always keep me in. So I always made sure that we made decent money because he was terrific. He also handled a lot of things that I didn't want to handle. And my the third P, partners, find partners that can do things you can't do. And he could do a lot of things I couldn't do. Find partners who could do things that do better than you do. And there were a lot of things he could do. Then the third one was really important. Do things where, things that you do really well that you don't want to do. Like, for example, I do pretty well with handling government agencies, but I hated it. He took all of the government agencies. They came into the firm, the IRS, the SEC, the NASD. He handled all that. And that left me alone to do what I love to do, which was to find the right person and build a business. And that was my great strength. And that we did that for better than 20 years and we're successful. But without Steve, wouldn't have happened. So that's why I tell young people, find your Steve. I always kid about this fellow, Richard, who was a classmate of mine at school, who basically, was my best friend. And whenever I needed help, I'd call him. So, mentors, friends, these are kinds of things that young people have to recognize that it requires effort. It just doesn't happen. I tell people, find someone who's sitting next to you and call he or she once a year at least and get together. Or have a group. We've had a group of 25 guys that have gotten together. Now we're down to about 12, but you still get together and talk things over and so forth. It's very important. So this is why my book, The 4 Ps, passions, principles, partners, and plans. I think that's just a vocabulary for your inner voice. It's what you keep going back to make decisions. Right? What are my passions? Passions change. I mean, think about your passions. Now, Rochelle, you're as young as I. When I was younger, my passions were math, science, baseball, basketball, and girls. That sort of changed over time. After I got married, the girls kind of faded away a little bit. But and math and science morphed into engineering and finally into finance. So, and now my passion on Wall Street, one of my principles on Wall Street was to basically be happy, was to be hidden, stay out of press, stay away from the radio. Now that I'm in this crazy book business and selling ideas, I'm out talking to Kevin O'Donnell and Rochelle. That's a different. I never wanted to do that. I wanted to be private. But if you're private, you don't sell any books, and you don't create any waves for ideas. And
you're not allowed to be private anymore, Ed. By the way, Rochelle,
media. You should follow me on social media. We have 290 posts already, and last year I had 500,000 visits. It's driving me crazy. I'm afraid something's going to happen to me, but but I never was on any social media at all. But my publicist now has got me. This gal does a great job of putting me on social media every 2 weeks. So.
Good.
Well, the important thing, and you said it, is to have a team, and it's important to have people in your life. I have two people that are in my company and that work with me who do not put up with my shenanigans. One you're looking at right there. Rochelle, we need to take our halftime break, but we're talking with Ed
Hajim. Do you say it any other way, Ed? Because I love the way Hajim sounds.
That's it. Hajim is much sexier. There's no doubt about that. I think maybe I'll change my name to Hajim.
Well, how do you pronounce it just on a daily basis?
Hajim.
Hajim.
Like
okay.
shouting for Jim. Hey,
Ed,
Jim.
Hajim, everybody. Hajim, if you want to be fancy about it like me, visit his website, edhajim.com. He's got his 2 books and everything else there that we will continue to talk about. And I have a question when we come back.
And we will be right back. Stay with us, everybody. You're listening to Positive Talk Radio Network. We're on a mission to entertain, enlighten, empower, and educate through inspiring music, dynamic conversations, and yes, laughter. Join me, Kevin McDonald, and Rochelle as we declare our freedom from hate, division, and fear and celebrate a better way of living. Go to positivetalkradio.net to find out more. Here is another point to ponder by Positive Talk Radio. The world is full of people who would die for someone they love. But what about living for them? Waking up early to take care of your health. Letting go of the habits that steal your years. Choosing rest instead of running yourself empty. The truth is, your family doesn't want a hero who dies for them. They want a parent who stays. A friend who grows old with them. A soul who chooses life every single day. Don't just die for love, live for it. And welcome back to Positive Talk. My name is Kevin McDonald, and Ed is here, along with Rochelle.
Hey, Jim. We agreed on Hey, Jim.
You guys are
You can
flunking.
say that.
Hey Jim, and we can call you Ed. Hey Jim, and stuff. So Ed, you are a very special man. You've gotten a couple of books, and they are real meaningful. The 4 Ps, I think, says it perfectly. And how did you? Well, first of all, Rochelle had a question. She was yelling at me in her own mind to my own mind. Shut up, you! I have a question.
You heard me, and I wasn't being that rude. But Ed, I'm very curious. You were talking about how important it is for us as younger people to have somebody there along our side, somebody to work next to, and guide us and lead us. Who was somebody in your life that taught you something very, very important at a young age that was maybe a mentor to you? And what did they teach you?
Well, you start off basically with your parents, and my father wasn't never there. He basically abandoned me 4 times in my first 15 years. But he gave me something that I could carry the rest of my life, which was unconditional love. And that was something that he was a bit of a mentor. In fact, he was more of a mentor than he was a father. He would, things like cleanliness is next to godliness, always be dressed correctly, and unconditional love. But going back to the first thing is I think people like the headmaster or the head of the last orphanage that I was at, a man named Ruben Koftov. He taught me that if you really want to help somebody, you've got to be interested in them, and they have to know it. And I at that point in my life, I was 17, 18 years old. I didn't trust anybody. And over a period, I was there for 3 years, I got a chance to trust him because he basically gave me the impression that he was really interested in me. And all my life, I think that's one of the strengths that I've had in certain areas. In certain areas, I'm not good at that. But people believe that I want them to do better than they think they can. And he wanted me to do better than I thought I could. I was, 5'7", 120 pounds, and, funny looking and wearing a black leather jacket. And he imbued in me, you're going to do better than you think you can. And I carried that through my business career. And even in my middle business career, a couple of young people came up to me, and I didn't realize it. I said, we like working with you. I said, why? I said, because you really want us to do better than we think we can. So I carried that on. That's one of the sort of mentors but I always tried to have a mentor who had been where I'd been, who had been there, done that.
Yes.
My last mentor was on Wall Street when I was a big shot, CEO of a firm and so forth. I had a guy named Wally, who was 10 years older than I am. He was the CEO of a firm, another firm on Wall Street. And he was sort of semi-retired by the time he became my mentor. But I could ask Wally any question. And in many respects, Wally didn't give me a lot of answers. He just listened to me, and I listened to myself. But he was somebody I could talk to on any basis. So I think that young people, they should really struggle to find mentors, compatriots, but also find people who've been there, done that. And you can be a pain in the neck. And people say, well, they won't. How can I get that person? You just keep bothering them until you get. There's one person that she writes me every couple of months and asks me questions. She had a wonderful mentor who died, and she said, I really want to make you a mentor. I said, I really don't have time for that. She's there, and I get back to her every time, and we become a relationship, and I can't do without her because I look forward to the next thing that we're going to do together. So you can be a pain in the neck and still become a partner of somebody, and that's important. But I gave you too much for one answer, but I think you get something from almost anybody who's truly interested in you. So the other reverse question is, what is a mentor? A mentor is somebody, I think, who is really interested in you. And you can feel it. And I hate to say it, that person who has to have been where you're going. Because if you're going to be a doctor, you can't get a lawyer as a mentor. And then if you want to get the real mentor is going to help you get where you're going. Or you have to have some other kind of aspect to it. But the person first has to be really interested and be willing to spend the time and the energy. Yeah. Anyway.
Very good. And thank you, Kevin, for being that for me. I am, it's humbling, and also I would be jealous if I wasn't me, because that's exactly what I've learned through having a mentor. I used to look up to people, and then I realized I shouldn't probably want to follow in their footsteps. There's things I like about them as a person, but are they really interested in me, or are they interested more in themselves and what I'm helping them achieve, and going through that process? But it doesn't have to be aggressive. It can be very understanding. It makes learning fun. There is no failing. It's just learning. And to have somebody next to you to say, hey, you actually are not failing unless you choose to give up right now. And what can we learn from this? How can we move forward? Not to sugarcoat it or put fluffies all over it, but also to be real with you. And how you said, just kind of, I've been there before. Every time I come to Kevin, sometimes he'll just take a breath and he'll look at me. He's like, okay. And that's when I know I need to listen.
But I love her. I understand why I had an interview the other day and someone asked me, do you have any heroes? And you said exactly what I said. I don't have any heroes, because I think that you take the best part of people. Like, for example, Winston Churchill, I'd love to have his perseverance. I don't want his drinking habits. Steve Jobs, I want his creativity. I don't want his personality. And so, that's what you're saying. Don't, just take from people, the person interested you, take from them their good, whatever they have, and recognize don't expect everything. There are very few perfect people, if any. And, people say you must have somebody that you really, would like to emulate. And there is a couple people in the world, but what happens is they fail you after a while as well. So I won't mention names, but you get people who are very successful and they lose their way. But that the important is that we don't want to hero worship. You want to take from everybody the particular good thing that they have that you may need.
Exactly.
And then what you said exactly. Finding someone who's been there, done that, or someone who's really interested in you. A good friend, even a compatriot, or someone your age like this fellow Dick. All his life he was interested in me. In fact, it was 10 years ago. He was dying. He had a terminal disease, and I would call him up kind of Tuesdays at Morey's. Every Tuesday or Wednesday I'd call him up, and the first thing out of his mouth was, "How are you? How are the children? Are you working too hard?" He's dying. And he's asking how I am. That's the kind of person he was, and that all through our relationship. That's the way he was. And so that kind of person is a gift. And
it's true.
Now he's gone. So, but I haven't quite replaced him. That's for sure. Too hard.
And I tell you, sometimes the mentors that mean the most to you in life are the people that you would think shouldn't. I had a little league baseball coach, and I was with him for 4 years. My dad was off making money and slaying dragons and stuff. He didn't have time for little old me, but this guy would make sure that he picked me up every day and dropped me off every day. And every new season, he had another car, and it was another old beater. He was a window washer. And it wasn't what he did, it was who he was and how he treated. He didn't even have a kid on the team, and yet was there every day, and he treated us like. I asked him one time, and I'll never forget this one. I said the first time that I got into his car with a new season started, and I said, "Is this a new car?" And he said, "Well, for me, it's a new car. Have you ever known me to have the same car 2 years in a row? Because the other one falls apart, and then I get another one, and then the engine died." And he said, "Excuse me." He had to go into the back to get a gallon of gasoline, put it into the car, got back in the car, and said, "Well, have you ever known a car where everything worked? For me, in this case, it's just the gas gauge doesn't work, so I carry a gallon of gasoline with me." So, but he taught me. Yes, but he was the mentor of my entire life, and we have them as we go along. But Brachelle's right. A lot of times, we create something in our own mind of what a mentor should be, and then they disappoint us for whatever reason.
You have to go on. Mentors, some die, and also some change, and you change, and you may need a different kind of mentor. Right now, I'm totally. I don't need a Wall Street mentor for sure. I need somebody who's been in this business, who's carried ideas to the completion, and totally different mentor, and different program completely. That's what passions change. All these things change, and that's why I think this idea of having vocabulary, where you keep going back to the same stuff, and that plan keeps getting erased and rewritten. And young people today, they're going to live to 100. They're going to have to pivot a number of times.
Yeah. Change is okay. Yes.
Old days, you get a job as a chemical engineer, you go to Kodak, spend your whole life there. Not anymore. The whole businesses will change, and you got to pay attention. I believe in deep dive every couple of years. And one of the deep dive questions is the company and the job and the position you're going, is this still going to be interesting 5 years from now? Or good,
Yeah. And I keep asking Brachelle that, are you going to still want to do this in 5 years? And she says, I don't know.
You are lying. And you know it. But that's okay. You know what? Test me. It's a good challenge.
Seriously. Have you heard anybody say lying better than that? That's the prettiest lying I've ever heard in my life.
And that's why I depend upon her, because she tells me the truth, even though when I don't deserve to be told the truth from time to time. So, by the way, we're talking with head Hajim, right?
Close.
Hajim, Hajim, choose your sexy level.
And we need to take our final break, and this one means a lot to me, and I want to play it real quick, and then we're going to be back with Ed, and we're going to talk about his books and all Ed, I do so many interviews that there are times when I forget how impactful a guest is when we have them on the show, and then I get to remember during the course of the show why I wanted you back, and now it's like you are such a breath of fresh air, and you feel so dedicated to helping people and to helping kids and writing books and stuff. And by the way, ladies and gentlemen, Ed doesn't have to do any of this. He makes plenty of money. He could go off to one of his golf courses that he owns, like the guy in the White House does, but he doesn't. He does things for people because he can, and it fills, I believe, Ed, it fills your soul. When we come back from this break, I want you to either confirm or deny that. And Rochelle, his website, please.
Yes, go to his website, edhajim.com, and you can find all the things that we've been talking about and follow along. And I'm just saying, we could switch it up, and maybe Ed could be the next president. I'm fine with that.
So am I. But he actually, I think he's too smart to do that, because he knows that, anyway.
Too much peace, and we won't make money.
No.
Just kidding.
That's it. We'll be right back after this quick message. Here's another point to ponder by Positive Talk Radio. Look at the world today. We see conflict, poverty, and division driven by the tragic illusion that my people are separate from yours. This belief in separation is the single greatest obstacle to peace. The truth is, humanity is a single global body. When one part of that body, a child in poverty, a family fleeing violence, is in pain, the entire system suffers. We cannot truly be well while our brothers and sisters are wounded. There's no us and them in this body, only us. Our sacred responsibility is to move past labels and see the shared light and common dignity in every single person on earth. Justice, for one, is justice for all. Compassion, for one, is compassion for all. This is the blueprint for global survival. We are one global family. Let empathy be our border, and let love be the only banner we carry. And I got to tell you, I play this for Rochelle.
Yes. Lean on Me by Bill Withers. It never gets old.
No.
And welcome back to Positive Talk, everybody. My name is Kevin, and Rochelle is right there, and Ed Hajim is right there. And I'm so pleased that you have joined us. And I want to say that, like I said, you've been on Wall Street, and you've done a lot of things. You've built golf courses. You've been all over the world. You don't have to do what you're doing. You don't have to write these books. But I believe that you're doing it because you have a greater purpose. Would you like to expand upon that?
Well, in my book, in the second chapter, we go through what I call the 4 realms of life. Self, which you spend a lot of time on when you're young. You have to find out who you are. Family, which is all that's left after everything's said and done. Work is where you make your living, and you make your mark. You make a mark as well as your living. And the final one is what I call community. It's giving back. It's what you're really put on the planet for. And I think that people don't give back. They don't get the greatest satisfaction. It's almost selfish. The satisfaction I get out of giving a scholarship to my poster child is 5 foot high, weighs 100 pounds. About 8-9 years ago, she was an optical engineering major, freshman. She graduated, she got her PhD in optical engineering, an MBA in business. She's now teaching and working and so forth. And she stood up in front of 100 people and said, wasn't for you, Mr. Hajim, I wouldn't be here. So, that pays the price. And I'm trying to convince people that giving back, that fourth part realm of life, is almost the most important one. And it's more important now than ever before. When you died when you're 65, you can work till you're 65 or 70. But when you're going to live as long as I have, and as long as people in today's world, that big chunk of life that's left, you got this experience. And if you've been relatively successful, you've got the funds to do it. You're right. I don't have to do this. Not at all. But, what else am I going to do? And by the way, when you start doing it, you feel enormous satisfaction. I mean, you go into Newark, New Jersey, and sit up among a bunch of first-gen kids, each reading your book. And, I asked one young lady who was like 12 years old, what are you really interested in? She says, I'm a Renaissance person. And, that made my day, She's a little girl, but that whole area, and there are so many areas. I mean, there's politics, which I just couldn't do. There's healthcare, there's education. There's whole arenas that you can play in. And as a friend of mine said, well, I haven't got any money. Well, your time is very important. Barbara had a 95-year-old aunt who used to work at the library, and she got terrific satisfaction on finding books for people, helping people pick out books. And she lived to 95 because that's what she was doing for the last almost 20 years of her life. So that's so much simple to say that here's life 4 parts and you got to concentrate on them. And that's why I said, and basically, in many respects, there's no such thing as balance. You're always out of balance. When you're focusing on yourself, you're not focusing on your family or your work or even community. And many people don't have time for community until later on in life, so they focus on, then some people over-focus on the work. That was one of the problems I had on Wall Street. I found too many people, it's funny, running a company, you would like people to concentrate on their work, but they over-concentrated on their work. They lost their family. Then they weren't as good at work. So I always paid attention to people going on vacation, taking time off, and so on and so forth. Still had a lot of problems because the work was enticing. If you're interested in making money and you get into Wall Street, you're going, really make a lot of money if I work harder. But it really doesn't work because you got to build a harmony between all those two things. Even you forget about some time when you're working on your work, you forget about yourself. You end up gaining weight. You end up, doing all kinds of bad things to yourself, drinking, smoking, and so forth and so on. So that's why I said at the end of the year, go to the 4 Ps, the 4 realms of life, spend some time on them. Maybe one of them you've been neglecting more than you should neglect. Maybe one you got to spend a little more time on, but it's vocabulary, your inner voice. That's one of my real, I'm not discoveries, but there's, the death and taxes, those aren't 2 constants. They're 2 constants, which is one, your inner voice, you get that from birth to death, and change. And giving the vocabulary for that inner voice to allow to handle change and make decisions is really one of the success points. It doesn't work all the time, and then you add your own words. You may have some special other word or two. You can't make it too complicated because you got to go back to it. And there was a Chinese medicine cabinet with I want a passion drawer, I want a principles drawer, I want a partners drawer, and I want a plans drawer. So I keep put them in there, go back, open the drawer, and go pull them out and take a look at them again. And the principles are very important. Pull them out, and I have up on my wall, I've got a bunch of principles I put in Wall Street. Most of them are cliches. One thing I found was wonderful on Wall Street was if you don't care who gets the credit, you can accomplish almost anything. And then I took that to the next step. I started to try, and every time someone said I did a good job, I tried to deflect the credit. Try it sometime. Someone says, Kevin, you've done a great job. I say, no. It was Mary Sue and Jose. But
I do it all the time, and they don't let me get away with it.
It does. So deflecting credit is one of my principles that I developed. I started off by taking all the credit when I was a young guy. I want the credit, but then I started realizing that really didn't work. So I started, not worrying about who gets the credit, and then deflecting credit.
It doesn't matter. And I agree with you, Ed. Service is of the highest order for everything. As a matter of fact, yesterday, I have to tell you this. Yesterday, we interviewed a gentleman. He's in Idaho. And he discovered that there are lots and lots of kids who do not have a bed to sleep in the United States of America. And so he took it upon himself, and he started small. He built a bunk bed because he heard of a friend their children had no bed. And so he built a bunk bed. He's now in over 50 or 60 locations around the country of people that are volunteering. And somebody that I know dearly has volunteered with them to help build a bed or build beds where she lives, because in one of the places that there are 156 kids, I think that's the number, that don't have a bed. So it doesn't have to be a grand thing. It can be just providing a child with a place to sleep, that they are safe and comfortable, and that does your heart good. I know you agree with that.
And the passion too.
Yeah.
And my passion is, I love to build bunk beds, but my passion is that taking a 17-year-old who's got it all, but needs that next step to go to the next some kind of education, giving them enough funds to make that step. That changes their life. And the kids that get there, and that's in my life was very difficult. It's really beneficial to do that. It's something you give them credit for going through a very difficult period. Although when I give these talks to these young people who have real difficulty, I tell them they're lucky. They say, "What do you mean I'm lucky? I lived in a trailer for the last 5 years." I said, "You have capabilities that your other people who grow up in fancy communities don't have, because you're adaptable, you're resilient, you have perseverance, and you eventually get that little person on your shoulder saying you can do it." Whereas other people, everything's given to them. They later on in life they have to go through those problems and overcome difficulties. So, but you're right. And the bunk bed thing is wonderful because you find some passion, something we can really make a difference with a simple act. That's just so great, and I think that's really wonderful. And I happen to focus because my life changed because I got a scholarship.
And that's a really big deal. Burchelle, I would love for you to take us out because you do such a great job at this.
Yes. Well, thank you, Kevin, for making this possible. And Ed, thank you so much for coming back and having another phenomenal conversation with us. We are not done with you yet, so you get to come back.
This is going to be a relationship.
Well, we have so much to talk about because I still don't know everything about you, but thank you for doing this work and being so invested and curious and interested in the well-being of literally our next generation. I think that they definitely need it the most. So everybody go to his website, Ed Hajim or Hajim, however you prefer, .com.
Follow me on Instagram too.
Yes. Call him, do all the things. So, Ed, as we close out the show, please do tell us all the ways people can reach you and find you in your work, and then maybe a message you'd like to leave us with.
The simple is it's www.edhajim.com. They've done a good job on my website. In fact, as the name is so unusual, you put it into Amazon, my 2 books come up.
Cool.
I'll leave you with my 3 mantras. Anything is possible. Education is a solution to everything. And never be a victim. You use the energy for being a victim to figure out the title of my next book is called What's Next. Focus on what's next. Don't focus on being a victim. And have a great day. As they say in the trade, may the force be with both of you.
Yeah. And may let's see, what is it? How does he say that? Ed, live long and prosper.
You both too. Enjoy. Right.
And thank you so much. Burchelle, anything before we go?
No, just thank you, everybody. I am so glad that Ed came to join us in. I hope you learned something that you can take with you, that maybe planted a seed and gives you inspiration to get curious about yourself and think of change in a positive way and use that towards the force of your life. And just remember, if you don't believe in yourself, we believe in you. So stay strong until then.
Love it. I love
it. Ed, isn't she just magnificent?
I'm going to steal her. Be careful.
No, you're not. Please don't.
I won't go anywhere. I'll duplicate myself. We'll figure out
Oh,
how to do that. I'm just
perfect.
kidding. But yes, thanks
The
everybody.
sorceress
Thank
is
you,
for
Ed.
granted, right, yeah.
Have a great day, everybody. Thank you for being part of Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald, where stories inspire and voices remind us of what truly matters. May today's conversation give you hope, courage, and a reason to keep moving forward. And just remember, till next time, be kind to one another because each other's all